Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
It's that time again, gang. A big thank you from me for stopping by to listen to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. It seems at the moment that every business out there is being told that they must prepare for Web 3.0 and they must put all their disparate data into one place and begin unlocking personalised experiences across a myriad of devices. If they don't, their customers will soon be going elsewhere to a company that will provide their new standard and meet their expectations. But where do you begin to meet these new standards? On this podcast, I love exploring the solutions of tomorrow and how incredibly people that were almost ahead of their time will ensure that there is a solution available. It's like these guys have a sixth sense and create something that people will need not today but tomorrow. For example, one application performance management solution, APM for techies out there, is an APM for big data that correlates full stack performance metrics while providing automated insights and recommendations. It's all done by Unravel Data. And I want to introduce you to them today because I want to find out more about the story behind Unravel and how they experienced the frustrations of manually troubleshooting performance problems in big data stacks and did something about it. Unravel closed Series B funding in January and announced a collaboration with Microsoft Azure in May, so it's incredibly exciting times for them. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears into the heart of Silicon Valley so we can talk about the innovative technologies and dynamic personalities and speak to Unravel CEO Kunal Agarwal. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Thanks so much for having me on, Neil. I'm Kunal, co-founder and CEO of Unravel Data. Unravel is a performance management software for big data applications. We all know the enterprises are now moving to what we call modern data apps. Everybody, depending on the type of industry, is running machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things type of applications to progress our company, to move things forward, to create new products, to provide better customer service, to lower their operations cost, and a ton of other stuff, which means that these applications are very, very critical to how the business performs and to the longevity of the business itself. Unfortunately, the systems that these applications run on and keeping these applications running like a well-oiled machine is pretty much black art today. There's so many things that can go wrong, and there's just not enough expertise or tooling around making sure that all of these important applications run on time every time. And that's the mission that Unravel has embarked on, is to make sure that companies can rely on their big data applications, that they can make sure that all of these systems, the underlying architecture is stable, and that they can actually leapfrog into this new world of artificial intelligence and machine learning with confidence.
Now, one of the main reasons I invited you on the show today, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I did a bit of research, I discovered that there's actually only one application performance management solution for big data that correlates full stack performance metrics while providing automated insights and recommendations, and that's done by Unravel Data. So first of all, is that correct? And also, can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving with your tech and how you're standing alone in this space right now?
No, absolutely. So you're right. We started our life a little bit early in the entire ecosystem, if you may. Big data itself is very new. Companies have started adopting this technology only about 4 or 5 years ago, if you may, for their production systems. We saw this coming, rather early, that when companies start to depend on these types of applications, one of the biggest challenges that they will have is around maintaining, managing, monitoring these applications. We just knew that these big data systems are super complex. Unlike older systems like Oracle or other databases that companies used for storing and managing their business data, those are monolithic stacks, meaning it was one vendor, one platform that would do everything. So if you had expertise in that one system, you were pretty much good to go. In big data, unfortunately, fortunately, you've got a mission mash of, 10, 12, 15 different technologies that you put together in order to achieve your goals. And that's why we figured that there's going to be huge complexity and people are going to scratch their heads over how does this all work? And if I have a problem, how do I go and fix it? Older and incumbent monitoring and performance tools have always taken the stance of, hey, let's provide information about what's happening and then let the consumers figure out where the problems are and how to go and fix them. So they would create like a dashboard or a visual, and then the user would log in and try to find cause and effect, looking at these different graphs and metrics, and then do the root cause analysis in their head, trying to figure out, hey, maybe this is the problem or that is the problem, and then go, with a trial and error technique to try to solve it. What we've seen is this is a super cumbersome process. In fact, research that we did shows people spend 70% of their time firefighting these issues rather than being productive on these newer systems. So we took a different approach to the problem here where we said, hey, instead of just giving people a dashboard and expecting them to figure out everything, can we use big data technologies ourselves to be able to discover patterns, to be able to uncover issues, to be able to give them automatic root cause analysis, and then actually solve the problem for them in an automatic way as well. So unlike other monitoring tools, if you come into Unravel, it will tell you in plain English, hey, your application is slow today or it's failing today because of this reason out of hundreds of possible reasons. And this is how you can go and resolve it. So people get in and out of problems very, very quickly. And our entire value prop is to make sure that these guys are spending time building value for the business and the company that they're working in, rather than resolving all of these systems and application level issues. I mean, who wants to do that anyways, right? It sounds boring to do and spend half your life fixing those problems. So somebody had to do the unsexy side, and we've taken on that as our business.
And it's so important to talk about this unsexy stuff, especially in a world that just, where it is littered with buzzwords. And a lot of what you talked about there are problems that are going to resonate with so many people listening. But I'm curious, how did you get here? I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about the story of your company and how it was inspired by that frustration of manually troubleshooting all that unsexy stuff and those performance problems in big data stacks? I mean, can you tell me more about that and how you got here?
So I've always been in enterprise technology, since I started out my career, actually. Used to sell, implement Oracle products for huge conglomerates all over the United States. We had customers like Johnson & Johnson, Hamilton Sundstrand, that made airline engines, a lot of different healthcare companies, etc. And this is back in 2012, 2013, when we saw companies were starting to dip their feet in these new technologies like Hadoop and Spark. And while these technologies were super powerful and really flexible and can do a bunch of different things, but it was so rough around the edges that it wouldn't become mainstream, meaning not everybody could jump on it and start using it just because it was so complex. There were other challenges besides performance issues, in 2012, 2013 around security, around making sure that it's compatible with everything else that they're doing, all the integration points, making sure that it's reliable. And we knew early on that, hey, this bet of Hadoop, Spark, Kafka, all these new technologies is going to become mainstream because it's got amazing benefits. What we need to do is make sure that we simplify how people actually interact with these systems, and we simplify how people have to maintain these systems. And that would actually increase the adoption of this technology, in the marketplace. So that was our bet very early on. I met my co-founder actually when I was studying at Duke University, doing my MBA there. And my co-founder, he's a professor of computer science at Duke. And he was researching database optimization techniques for a good part of the decade. He's got 80 plus publications around this particular area. So when we met, one thing that we found in common is while he was looking at how do we simplify, how do we improve performance of these big data systems from the academic perspective, I was trying to scratch that same problem, looking at it from the industry perspective. And that's why we combined forces and we started this company called Unravel back in 2013. But then it took us about 2 years to get the product in a shape that would start becoming applicable to everybody in the industry. And the reason for that is big data itself was very new. All these technologies were still evolving. Even the roles within the organizations were still revolving. There was no big data department in a company when we started out. So we moved out west. We both quit our jobs. We used to live on the East Coast. I was in New York. Shivnath, my co-founder, was in North Carolina. And we both moved to California literally overnight. And we started working with companies that were running big data at scale back then. And you can imagine these were the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Zynga, the gaming company. There was Cloud. There was a couple of other companies that were using Hadoop and Spark at scale. And we worked very closely with them. In fact, we used to live in their offices, work with all the people over there, trying to understand, hey, what problems do you guys face on an ongoing basis that you just get frustrated with and you spend so much time on? And those are the problems that we started to handpick and saying, hey, we will simplify this for you. We will automate this for you so you don't have these frustrations while you can keep making progress on, creating these amazing applications, right? So we've been fortunate in that way, Neil, where, opening the doors for us and working with all of these different companies, we've seen some amazing use cases of big data, right? There's banks that are running these very, very sophisticated fraud prevention programs now that are saving them hundreds of millions of dollars every year. So, as soon as you swipe a credit card, right, it'll tell you if this is a fraudulent charge or not. So now they're getting really sophisticated by figuring out, hey, where is Neil with his GPS location, right? Yeah. What is his spending patterns? Can we now determine with good confidence that that is not Neil's expenses and that's somebody else's expenses and flag that for him, right? We've seen amazing use cases in the healthcare department. Now, people are wondering, hey, why should I pay so much for insurance when I'm a healthy person, right? I wake up every morning, I go work out, I eat healthy, I exercise, but even then I'm paying the same insurance as a 60-year-old unhealthy person, for example, right? And now insurance companies are saying, hey, we can track how your activity is with your Apple Watch. We can see what your heart rate looks like. We can see how many visits you actually have for the doctor. We can see how many medicines you actually take. We know your lifestyle a lot better now. And now we can start customizing these insurance packages for you so the healthy people don't have to pay these excessive premiums, just like everybody else, for example. So we're seeing massive strides being made in every industry using data. And you may have heard this term, data is the new oil, data is the new gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only does the platform monitor and unify system level data, but it also goes extra mile to track, correlate and interpret performance data too. And automation is a big word at the moment. So can you tell me a little bit more about how these automated insights are actually helping businesses analyse, troubleshoot and actually optimise the performance of their big data apps?
Right. So when you go into a company that's relying on big data, they're running about 10,000 to 20,000 of these apps every day, right? That's the scale that we're talking about. And they're processing, several petabytes of data. So you've got hundreds of users, tens of thousands of applications bombarding that same system every day. A lot of things can go wrong. And there's a group, which is usually called the operations group, that's sitting down in the center of it all, managing these systems, managing these applications, and they get all the calls around, this broke today, fix that, my business is slowing down, the report that I was waiting on for my 8 a.m. morning, that didn't come about, what's going on? If I'm Spotify, for example, I'm looking at, hey, I have to provide recommendations to my users for listening to their next song, otherwise they're not going to find the value in Spotify. So all of these applications are becoming more and more mission critical and more real time. So things just have to work. So what we do is something that a big data expert would do in their heads. which is once they get a support ticket, say around my application is slow, they would dig into logs, they would check out system level metrics, and we're talking hundreds of different screens to go and understand what happened with one application. We've estimated that if you do it in a manual way, this is going to take you about 60 to 80 hours of work time to go and resolve one issue. That means even if 1% or 2% of your applications have problems every day, you're going to resolve these problems in a manual way in about 15 years. That happen every day. So a machine has to solve these problems. You have to be able to give people answers and get them moving with their day very quickly. So what we do, Neil, more specifically is we gather all the information about the system, about the applications, about all the other layers like the data layer, the infrastructure itself, all the operating system and software that runs on top of this. And all this data is giving us telemetry information about how are things performing, what's going on, what's anomalous, what's abnormal. And we're tracking all of that in real time and then presenting our end users who have to solve these problems and maintain these systems very pinpointed alerts around, hey, this problem is about to happen. And they can also set up automatic actions to take an action, to have Unravel take an action on their behalf so that they're not looking at this in a reactive way. They're solving these problems proactively. So end users will never even get to see that anything was down, anything was broken, things were slow. And that just improves the quality of service of this, big data investment that these companies have.
So if any business leaders listening who have been burnt in the past by unpredictable performance and failures, what's the secret to ensuring that their big data applications run on time every time?
Right. So if you look at any analyst report, Gartner, for example, Forrester, even New York Times had a huge article around, the promises and pitfalls of this technology called Hadoop, right?
Yeah.
The biggest hindrance to big data success, or the reason why big data projects are slow or completely outright fail, are two things. Number one, lack of talent and expertise. And number two, lack of tooling to make sure all of these stuff works well. So in the past, when companies did not have Unravel, when Unravel did not exist, they used to not only spend so much time trying to fix these issues, but a lot of these issues were just out of their control. And they used to keep falling flat, which meant that, if you're a company that's invested a couple $1 million in big data, you've created a team around this, and you're hoping to achieve some results, say in 3 months or 6 months, those projects were getting delayed to a year or 2 years. And a lot of times, leadership just felt frustrated and they were like, we can't trust these systems, so we got to move on. And they abandoned these projects as well. Because of how we do this full stack monitoring and management, and we look at every component in your big data stack, and not only provide you, help you understand where the problems are, but also give you a way to go and fix it. The confidence of this management has increased significantly, where they're saying, hey, maybe we just wanted to create a customer usage report using big data. That was use case one. Now we feel far confident that that works. So now we can offload a bunch of new workloads onto this big data ecosystem and start creating recommendation engines, for example. We're working with a ton of car companies right now, all these automobile manufacturers, to help them actually, live up to the promise of doing connected cars and autonomous cars. Everybody out here, especially in the United States, are all following Tesla's footsteps to start creating their own autonomous technology. And that relies on IoT data, right? So it's cars looking at the road in, hundreds of images, thousands of images per second, trying to detect if this is a road, if that's a tree, and how do I navigate, and do I turn left or do I turn right? But more so now, cars are not only talking about autonomous technology, they're talking about connected cars. So can cars talk to each other? Which means you will never have accidents on stoplights. You will know where every car is, and you can have a smoother flow of traffic. Your cars will talk back to your shops and let them know that there is a failure going to happen in your gearbox or your engine even before you notice it. So you can put your car in the repair shop and take care of that proactively. So a lot of these use cases would not have been possible if companies could not rely on this technology. And we are one of the enablers of this big data ecosystem, helping companies, breathe a sigh of relief, saying, not only are my investments working, but I'm able to out-innovate my competitors, or I'm able to present my customers with these amazingly new products that will help me reduce my costs and also improve my revenue.
And it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, earlier this year as well, of course, Unravel closed a Series B funding in January. And even more exciting, especially from my point of view, watching you guys from the outside and looking in, is that you announced a collaboration with Microsoft Azure in May. So can you tell me a little bit more about how that is helping you evolve and what plans you have for the future?
Absolutely, Neil. So we've been growing at a very rapid pace. As you can understand, Unravel is very core to any big data project to be successful. So we've seen massive adoption over the last couple of years since we first launched our product, as GA, when we made it generally available. Since then, we've been able to attract some of the top tier investment firms in Silicon Valley to invest in the company. Our first round was done by Data Elite Ventures, followed by Menlo Capital, which is invested in big companies such as Uber. And now we've got GGV Capital as well, which has huge presence in China as well as the United States. And along with that round, Microsoft also put in some money in Unravel. And this is, again, validation that our product is needed in the market and our product is working and solving real problems in the market, these difficult problems of making sure everything works properly. With Microsoft, we also see a very strong partnership. Unravel works on systems where companies allow big data processing to happen. So big data systems are both on-premise and on the cloud. On-premise, you've got companies like Cloudera and Hortonworks that actually just merged day before yesterday. MapR, IBM, a couple of these big giants as well. And then on the cloud, people are running big data tech using Microsoft Azure and Amazon primarily, and now Google is getting into that game as well. So we need to be present where people run big data technologies. And Microsoft is one of the leaders in providing big data stacks, technologies, applications to be able to run on their ecosystem. So it's only natural for us to go and support that platform. But now that we are not just a partner company, but a portfolio company, that relationship is definitely getting closer and stronger.
Well, the biggest attraction that I can see is how Unravel is actually radically simplifying big data operations with built-in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And in many ways, it seems like you guys are ahead of your time, because this is the ideal destination that everyone's chasing at the moment and trying to secure. But you guys have been doing this for some time. I mean, was this always your main goal, and did you see what was coming?
Yeah, so I sometimes joke and I say Unravel is big data for big data. When we go to our customers and they are using all of these amazingly innovative technologies, and they're looking at huge amounts of data and they're trying to draw patterns, right? They're trying to understand what Neil likes. They're trying to understand, what to present to you. All of that is a derivation of understanding all the data about you, for example, right? So we figured, hey, this is our chance to change the game in how systems and applications are maintained in a massive enterprise. And we should be using AI and machine learning ourselves in a similar fashion to how our customers use it, to give people answers instead of raw information, right? And letting them figure it out. Our goal wasn't AI and machine learning. Our goal was to always simplify these things, where we said, hey, if it takes 40 hours to go and solve a problem, what can we do to make sure that this problem can be solved in 30 seconds? And we figured automation, along with machine learning and AI, provided us a good medium to get to that place. So for example, you don't have to sift through logs anymore. You don't have to go and check out 20 different screens anymore. You don't have to connect the dots between one graph that you saw somewhere and say, oh, I saw a dip in that graph. because I saw this other thing go up. Maybe that's the reason. Instead of like, if you see these operations rooms in these big enterprises, you'll see this system admin or this operations guy sitting down in front of 20 monitors, trying to look at all of these things happening and trying to figure out cause and effect of these things. For us, we were always thinking, hey, how do we simplify this? How can we connect all of this data together so people don't have to do it in their head? And how do we get them to answers in a more accurate way than they would be able to get into? So if you were solving problems without Unravel, you would have to do trial and error. For example, performance of an application has 300 knobs, literally. And if you turn these knobs a little bit left and right, they can greatly affect the performance of the app. So say you want a recommendation engine to work, and every time it's giving recommendations, it should work in 5 seconds. And this is taking 5 hours right now. You would have to go and turn each knob just a little bit, rerun that job, and then see, hey, did it take more time, less time? And then do it again, do it again, do it again, till you start getting happier with the performance. Who's got time for that, right? With Unravel, you literally click a button, and that's already got the best settings for you. And then you can specify over there and say, hey, I want to run this job within 5 seconds, and Unravel will figure those things out for you. So again, our value prop is always, if we simplify this, then people can actually move forward, with these big data technologies. And secondly, if we simplify this, then we level the playing field, and it's not just the Googles and the Twitters that'll be able to use big data technologies, because these guys have an army of these, tech guys sitting down there looking under the hood. But even companies that don't have such big teams can also enjoy the benefit of this amazing technology. So that's why we've always, since the beginning of Unravel, figured that our mission is to radically simplify these big data operations, which in turn will make it simple for these companies to go ahead and change the world.
Now, there will be many people listening that actually think that to unlock data's potential, to unlock data's true potential, it actually needs useful guidance coupled with tools and direction from a qualified workforce. So do you have any examples or use cases just to help listeners visualize how you can achieve that?
Right. So, firstly, I'd like to talk about that in the spectrum of Unravel, and then, a little bit about big data as well. So even with Unravel, when we were saying, hey, we solve these problems using machine learning and AI, it's not just about throwing data at a machine learning engine and letting it draw its own conclusions and patterns, which is a rather weak way to get to your result, because you're going to have a lot of false positives. You're just not going to have enough depth in that analysis. So any exercise with big data, even besides Unravel, needs to happen with some subject matter expertise, coupled with these machine learning tools to be able to get you to the results faster and easier. For example, if you are creating a recommendation engine for Spotify versus you're creating a recommendation engine for a clothing brand, it's going to be very different. The same recommendation engine that you create won't work. You need to know music tastes. You need to understand notes. You need to understand beats per minute. You need to understand the different genres of music. And if you are able to have that subject matter expertise built in to your algorithms, you'll be able to recommend Neil the next song, right? Because I need to know difference between hip hop and trance and house and rock and pop, but then also go below that one more layer to truly understand the kind of stuff an individual may like. You cannot translate that over directly to, say, if you were a clothing company providing recommendations on what you should be buying and wearing, right? Yeah. It's got a completely different set of variables. You're talking about textures and materials and colors, and you need to have subject matter expertise in that area to be able to make these things work well. So one of the biggest problems that we've seen is people just think, hey, a recommendation engine is a recommendation engine. You throw data, you train it, it learns, and then it'll spit out answers. But I'm always 100% sure that answer will not have the depth and will not be as accurate if you did not have the subject matter expertise built alongside it. So as much as everybody starts worrying about robots are going to take over the world and people lose their jobs and there's no room for people around there, it's quite the contrary actually, which is to make all of this stuff work well. You still need that human interference. You still need human input to be able to make sure that machines can do their jobs better.
It's a fantastic topic and something we could talk about forever. So a big thank you for coming on and sharing that with me today. But before I do let you go, could I just ask that you remind the listeners of where they can dig deeper and find even more information about you guys online at Unravel, and also maybe just contact a member of your team if they've got any burning questions after listening to us talk today?
Yes, so www.unraveldata.com. Is our home site, and that should have tons of information about our product, about our technology, and how we do what we do, along with a ton of information about how real-life customers are actually using our product and promoting their big data objectives forward. You can always email us directly at hello@unraveldata.com. That's hello@unraveldata.com, rather easy. And that comes directly to our team over here. So any questions that you guys may have, anything that you want to dig into, more than happy to do that for you guys.
Excellent. Well, listening to you talk there, it did bring back so many flashbacks of my former life of reactive firefighting. And what I really love about your approach here is it's about getting away from being reactive and getting proactive. That's going to make such a big difference for businesses. And also it comes at a time where almost every business out there, and I know because I attend a lot of conferences and everyone's searching for the same thing, and that's a way to radically simplify big data operations with built-in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And not only are you guys doing it, you seem to be the only ones doing it, and so far ahead of your time. So I know you've got an incredibly bright future. So a big thank you for coming on now and sharing that story with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you for the great wishes, and thank you for having me here.
There was a phrase in today's show that we used several times, the unsexy stuff. And this really resonated with me because we only deal in sound bites and buzzwords and exciting technology, and that's how we get what we want. Blockchain, machine learning, artificial intelligence, personalised experiences. They all sound incredibly simple, but these are very complex technologies. And I love how Unravel radically simplifies big operations with built-in AI and built-in machine learning. But I'm also fascinated by the fact that there's only one application performance management solution for big data that actually correlates full-stack performance metrics while providing automated insights and recommendations. And for those reasons alone, today's conversation was both fascinating, intriguing, and an incredibly exciting conversation. But I hope you enjoyed it too. But let me send the microphone over to you. What were your thoughts? What were the takeaways that you took away from today's conversation? And is there anything that you can add? Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, or tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. And remember, if you want to work with me and launch your own podcast in January 2019 with 8 episodes and begin the year by knocking a goal right out of the park, head over to podcastingmadesimple.info, where I'm taking a select number of people and attempting to transform them into a podcast host too. But that's it for me today. I'm off to Barcelona now to cover Magento Live next week, so expect some guests live on my travels. Before I go, a big thank you from me to you for taking the time to tune into this show and send me your messages. It's you guys that make this show possible. So thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.